Another thing I wanted to tell you is that you're gonna have blitz questions.
Gonna have what?
Blitz.
Blitz question. What does that mean?
And the guest for today's episode is Sofia Colette Ehrich. By the way, I'm very surprised the way it is pronounced. So Sofia Colette Ehrich is an art historian, academic researcher, podcast host, and curator of multisensory experiences. She currently works, and it's her main work at this point, with the European-funded project Odeuropa.
Odeuropa?
Oh, damn it. So currently her main work is with the European-funded project Odeuropa, which advocates for smells and smelling as important to European cultural heritage. So thank you, Sofia, for coming here and welcome.
Yes, and you'd be surprised. Odeuropa is difficult to pronounce for some people, so.
And sometimes even to write. Yeah. When I do, I just think, which letter should I omit? Or should I write Odeuropa? Odeuropa? Now I noticed that it's
Odeuropa. Yeah,
right.
I think for an English tongue, it's okay, but it can become a tongue twister sometimes.
You know, if I were a recruiter for this project, I would just have people and ask them, pronounce it right. If you pronounce it right, you offer the job there.
Yeah.
Any description is very limiting. And when I introduce guests, I feel very strange doing so since, people are definitely not labels and not professional labels either. And for me, Sofia is just a very bright personality, which I met in The Hague. Probably one of the weirdest things which happened, that we are both living actually in The Hague, which might not have any sense for people who knew me from my previous life, and maybe for those who know Sofia as well. Why The Hague? Before that, little Sofia, how did you even get to the studies you made, art historian? Who is that? And how people, were you born in a family which does arts, or how did you even find out that this profession exists?
Well, art historian and professional in smell culture, or whatever you want to put it. My influence on a smell perspective and art perspective, I guess you could say both, is from my mother, actually. I was struggling in community college in Santa Monica. I was struggling to find a path of what I wanted to study. Mm-hmm. And one day, because I had many interests, I was interested in entertainment, I was interested in art. I always loved museums. My mom always took me to museums and encouraged cultural heritage. And so that was always a nice activity for me and also with my mom. And so I was struggling to decide what I wanted to do, because at some point I had to choose a major. And so she pulled out this big textbook from her closet. It's called Art Through the Ages. And it was her textbook from when she took art history. She's an accountant, so she has nothing to do with art, although she's very creative. And so she handed me this book and she said, Art History 1 was my favorite class that I took in college. So maybe, you really like art. Maybe this is a good path for you. So I remember flipping through this book and I said, that might be a good idea. And so that was my choice. So I took art history courses at Santa Monica College, and then I applied to go for art history major at UCLA. And so that was kind of the art history path for me. But connected to the smell, I guess you could say unintentionally, because I never really thought, okay, who really thinks when they wake up, I don't know, when they're young, when I grow up, I want to be a smell researcher. I don't know that's...
No.
I don't think that's happening.
No. It's either perfumers, because they are the kids of the perfumers, or etc., but not smelled art research. Art research is already too much.
Yeah. This doesn't, I don't think this happened.
No.
But I was always connected to scents. I think we all are, right? And so my mom was really into aromatherapy in the early 90s, and thought about even going to classes and learning about it professionally, she does have a massage therapist license. So she's very into this kind of health and wellness and smells. And so when she was pregnant with me, in order to prevent her from getting stretch marks on her belly, she always rubbed lavender oil on her stomach when I was inside. And so this, I think, is why I love lavender. So I brought lavender with me for you to smell, because it's very calming. So it's actually a good way to start an interview.
We should have smelled it before.
We should have smelled it
and then breath work, and then we all forget about the interview.
We should have been diffusing it into the room.
It's a good idea, by the way.
But
a very good quality one, I suppose.
Yeah, so that's Tisserand.
I've heard your interview with them. It was a huge opening for me. Yeah, I mean, very interesting interview and very interesting institute as well. I now subscribe to their newsletters and read some stuff, which is very interesting.
Yeah, they have a good blog, and their classes are very nice.
Very. I'm interested, since this one is very different than many lavender oils I've smelled before. It's very diffusive to some extent. So
it's very strong.
You feel a lot of sweet notes, since I believe our listeners won't be able to do that. But right now, not yet. Yeah. Though in some of your interviews for the podcast, it seems like it's doable at some point to start smelling together with the guys you are listening to or playing games with or anything else. Yeah. But a very good quality one. I'm intrigued. Yep. So lavender oil in your mom's stomach.
Yeah. So that's.
And now you're the calmest person ever.
Well, there's kind of a joke in my family is that people say, I mean, I'm not always calm, of course, but that's one reason why I'm kind of like a calm personality most of the time, that, she kind of conditioned me with this lavender on her stomach. So, cool. So lavender has also always been one of my favorite scents. And usually the one I say if someone asks. Because that's a common question also, like, what's your favorite scent?
I believe I also have it somewhere, but right now we know the answer.
But yeah, I of course I have other scents that I really like, but that's I think that's my number one.
Cool. Yeah. And the story with your mom, just bringing you a book, she seems to have solutions to every problem.
I think most moms do, right? And then at some point in your life, you look back at all the things your mom has said, and you're like, yeah.
It was somewhere, right?
That's right. That was right a long time ago. I should have listened. So, yeah, my mom has a lot of good advice, and that was one of them.
But did she also recommend you, with your studies, going further to Europe to continue those?
Yeah, so my mom was also a big advocate of continuing and on to do a master's. So my master's program doesn't have much to do with art history. My master's is in media studies, because I am also very interested in media and technology. And so that's another interest of mine. And when I did my master's, I had already been exposed to some multisensory classes. And so my entire master's study was dedicated to figuring out how to bring smell into digital landscapes, because this is something that is not so common. So, I mean, we have olfactory virtual reality now, and there's some people experimenting, but it's still very uncommon. I think especially since cinema is a very traditional medium. So it's hard for people to imagine cinema with smell. But I think VR has good potential for it.
I would agree. When you've been talking about that, I remember one of the VR experiences, which I suppose if you or someone else were able to give recommendation to those who developed it, to use also the scent, it would be fantastic, since it was something uncommon for me. I don't know about your VR experiences, but in the end, when you go, it was the end of a game and you find yourself in a tropic forest. You find yourself in a tropic forest on a mountain. So everything happens there. The thing was that they use the fans. So you feel like it's a wind and it's already something. They use some system for making a sort of, some shower rain, but a very, not something we had this night, but just a rain which like shows you that you are technically there. And imagining having, of course you have a sound, of course you have a visual, so technically you already feel it, but like the smell dimension was missing, the olfactory dimension wasn't there. And as you are saying, like the VR experiences, they do might to benefit from that.
Yeah. And of course, Aaron Wisniewski from OVR Technology, he has started this. I really want to try it one day. I haven't been able to try it. But I think something he has down amazingly, which is, I think, the biggest challenge, is the changing of smells inside the system. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge, because that was also the challenge with Aroma, or these cinema systems.
When they tried to use the smell, yes.
Yeah.
So people don't expect some smells to be in the cinema at all, if I remember it correctly.
Well, they had issues with the smells being too synthetic, or the smells not going away. So they're in the air and then they don't dissipate properly, which I think is one of the most difficult challenges that you face when you're using scents as a medium. So that's, I think that's something he has done pretty well, and I'm very curious to try it out, because like the changing of smells in environments is difficult, and then also having a good quality one that persuades people that they're in the place that they want to, that they think they are. I think it's all of that balance of things.
I agree. And also, like, since you already started talking about challenges in the work of someone who does multi-sensory experiences, who wants to have to use smells in particular settings. Well, maybe you could say a little bit, I know that we're jumping from one subject to another, but say a little bit if you have the same challenges in your work, or maybe you have, like, as an art historian and also and multi-sensory experiences, or maybe you have some other challenges in your work.
So right now, my work focuses mainly on bringing scents to the museum setting, or to heritage settings. And right now, myself and about 6 co-authors, I think we are working on an olfactory storytelling toolkit for Odeuropa, and it's almost finished and will be released in November of this year. And so we work, this is a guide to help museum professionals in particular, bring scent to the museum.
Wow.
And we call this olfactory storytelling. And I wanted to define olfactory storytelling for you before we jump into the challenges, because some people might be like, what is olfactory storytelling? That sounds crazy. Well, of course, olfactory is the system, is our sense of smell. Storytelling, I think everybody knows what storytelling is, but it's basically telling stories with smell. But what I wanted to say before I give a definition is that a lot of the time, like what you were just talking about, like 4D experiences, we have where like 4D, what you see is what you smell. Right. So like I see
an apricot, I need to smell it should be apricot somewhere around.
Yes. Or like, in the experience, someone is toasting a bread and then you smell toast. So this is what Charles Spence calls pleonastic storytelling. So you see what you smell, and this is not what I'm referring to. So I want to emphasize, that's not what I'm referring to. For olfactory storytelling, this is really like the careful orchestration of scents, or maybe the other senses as well, because you can use other senses, to activate the visitor or the person who's experienced it in a meaningful way, and that those senses are integral to your experience. So it's not like you said, okay, I designed the entire exhibition and now we add lavender because we want to. It's more that, okay, we have this idea to make an exhibition, and then lavender is an integral component, and this is why, and this is how we will do it. So that's olfactory storytelling. So really that the scent, it represents something meaningful and integral to the exhibition or to the media experience, if that's VR or AR or a theme park ride or a film, whatever that might be. So this really careful orchestration of the senses or of scents to create a meaningful experience for the user.
So it's not complementary all the time. It's like not complementary in the meaning that I would say your idea is that you have a toast, as you've said. Since we're in the Netherlands, we need to discuss toasts, guys. So it's not the idea that you have toast and you need to be able to smell toast. It's like you see toast, but like you're looking at it, but then you have a smell which is probably a smell of, I know, patchouli, but why I'm referring to patchouli is that your Van Abbe work, it's like, yeah, it was a very interesting one, but patchouli should somehow complement it, but in a different way. So is that a very simplified idea or not?
Yeah, or that if you were to present the toast
With
and
sprinkles.
the scent, then you would complement it somehow with a reason or with a story that makes it meaningful. So you could present a toast with the smell of toast, but I don't necessarily want that person who's experiencing it to just be like, oh, I smell toast now. But that there's kind of a meaning behind why you smell toast. Okay, the history of the Dutch, they like to have we were just talking about this. They like to have a cold lunch. And so bread, they actually wouldn't toast it. Bread is very important to that lunch or whatever that may be. So there's kind of this like story or this arcing storyline, which I guess, I mean, filmmakers or directors, they would want this as well, right? So there's a visual. Why are you seeing that visual?
Right.
What is the importance of that? They're not the music. It's like the same as pairing music with a visual. You wouldn't have like a war scene with, I don't know, the Spice Girls playing necessarily, or there's this like comparison or complementary aspect to the scene that has to make sense.
So it's something like 1 + 1 should give 3 instead of 1 + 1 give 2.
I think so.
Right. So there should be some extra.
Yeah, and not to say that pleonastic storytelling, as Charles Spence defines it, like duplicating what is seen, is a bad thing. That works in certain settings, right? You just need to know your audience. So perhaps like in a theme park ride or 4D, that might make sense.
Right.
But in terms of like in museums and in terms of olfactory storytelling, in the sense that Odeuropa and my co-authors for this toolkit are going for, is this kind of storytelling. Do you still want me to go into the challenges?
Well, I would love to, because I believe many people right now thinking like, oh wow, why doesn't everyone use it? So they already know about art historians. They already know about art historians who work with smells. And now they think like these people, they should be like everywhere. I should go to any museum setting and be able to be exposed to this experience. Where is that? Why is not here yet? So why?
So there are many challenges. I'm going to just give 3, which I have found based on the research I've done within Odeuropa, and of course, based on all the previous people who have used olfactory storytelling before me. So the first challenge I'll mention is that we, and if you're talking about museums, you could say visitors, are very, have not encountered smell in the museum, most likely so far in their life. So we're not used to engaging with multisensory environments.
That's true.
It's just not in our blood.
Right.
So we're used to sitting in a movie theater, maybe. We're used to visuals. We're used to sound and visuals or audio-visual input, but we're not so used to having to smell something. In fact, that might make us uncomfortable in certain situations, right?
True. It's not something what happens to you like every night. You go, as you've said, like watch Netflix or something. You have visual, you have audio.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
2 dimensions involved.
Maybe you burn a candle at the same time, but then that's still like you're in your home and you decided you're going to burn a candle. You're not in a communal space like a heritage setting or a museum. And so it can be scary to smell something in a public space with other people because it can be considered an intimate experience. So that's the first one. It's challenging because we're not used to it.
No, it's not sorry, but not many people used to even go into museum settings. Again, in the Netherlands and in your experience with your mom, like thanks to her, you've been exposed to that.
Yeah.
And here we have like museum cards and you could just go easily to all the museums, like paying nothing for that. And the museums are most of very high level. But again, not everyone from those who are listening are even interested in museums as well. It's already scary for them. Like going somewhere and uncomfortable, might be not interesting. Oh, this modern art is just like a nonsense. I will not go there. And and you're now saying that, oh, we will put you an extra pressure.
Well, and I mean, partly the reason why some people might be intimidated by these spaces is because they're only visual.
I agree.
So it could be, but it's also an added layer that if you're not used to something, then it makes you worry or feel uncomfortable. So yes, this is definitely a big challenge, which I think can only be solved by more people using olfactory storytelling in museums.
No way. Right. Totally.
The second and the third one is one that I really have been personally working on very hard to solve, which is distribution and presentation of scents is difficult in space. So we were just talking about that. Odor. God, I'm forgetting if it's Aromarama or Odorama. This is terrible. I should know this.
Even the movie thing.
Yes.
I think it's Odorama, but
I think it's Odorama. Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Well,
I mean, people successfully have forgotten about that because they didn't use it. They didn't like it.
But researchers like Jazz Brooks and Simon Niedenthal are researching these kinds of methods, so we have to remember them.
Well, unless they...
I apologize for forgetting. So anyway, scents are fleeting. We know this. They dissipate. So when you spray them in the air, they tend to linger and spread. And this can make, this is an issue. It's an issue if you want to use more than one scent at a time. So how to present scents within spaces, whether that's a museum space or going with a film, this can be very challenging. And an extra layer of that is that it poses safety issues. So if you have scents ambiently in the air, some people who have a pre-existing condition of some sort might feel bad going into a space which smells so much of this particular scent. So you have to be very cautious and aware that not everybody wants to walk into a space that smells like roses or that smells like I don't know,
even like pre-existing memories of some extent. Or you mean
no, it can be physical, like asthma, for example.
Right. Even
though of course it depends on the situation, but some people feel very aggravated by it depends on intensity and the type of smell, of course, but it's also in the air, right? So if you walk in, then some people might be worried about allergies. And then another challenge is what you just said, that if someone walks into a room, just because it smells good like roses, doesn't mean that person doesn't have a bad memory associated with roses. And then you have, someone having a certain type of reaction or moment in the middle of a museum.
Right.
So within Odeuropa, we've tried out a lot of different presentation or distribution techniques, like scratch and sniff cards or scented cards, blotters with like covers on them, and what else?
We probably also have those small smelling, vials which you could open and smell.
Yeah, I've tried out like glass jars with lined with watercolor paper, and that works very well. So there's a lot of different things. Or stations, smell stations. You can have like glass bottles.
Like in Kunstmuseum right now.
Yeah.
With Mondrian's, right?
Yeah, so that kind of distribution method. So there's a lot of different options, especially with like more. It's not exactly dry diffusion because there's still VOCs coming out, but it is kind of this dry idea of dry diffusion that it's just scented air, so it's a little bit. It's safer for the artworks because that's an issue with smelling with distribution methods.
Exactly.
You don't want wet particles of scent just like going on the walls or the artwork. So this is one of the biggest challenges of like the conservation departments. They don't want smells lingering in the space that might harm the artworks. So that's a big one.
This one I have never thought about, but yeah, not all the pictures have those like glass, I don't know, like protection. It's definitely the challenge.
Yeah.
So basically I come into the situation where, okay, it might be 1 + 1 = 3, but at the same time it might be 1 + 1 = 0 or below 0, since the whole experience might be ruined just because you added this not very safe from understanding perspective and sometimes from like physical perspective components to the exhibition.
Yeah, and you might have the meaningful storytelling, you might have that all down, and the presentation of that with like the context of the scent. You have everything down, and then you distribute lavender. Well, maybe lavender won't be such a problem, but you distribute lavender like 20 intensity, and everybody walks in and they're like, this is awful because it's just too strong. So it's a delicate balance of these things, to kind of come together. And that's, it makes the challenges even harder.
It's like an art plus art, since like to some extent, like showcasing art is already a big thing. But now you have to like, okay, curatorship is about like finding the ways to showcase it. But you also have to now apply one more level of art to add in this dimension. So
yes,
it's a tough one. But you know, every time when you mention smell cards, I think about your, one of your projects, which I really like. The one is Nosetalgia, like for the Kunstlicht magazine. If I'm like articulating things correctly, but that's how I found it out from you. This Nosetalgia edition became for me a nostalgia edition. I will explain why, and we will probably go further to these cards. I usually am a kind of person, since I relocate a lot, and at the moment probably you will be listening to this episode, I will already be in Denmark, not in the Netherlands. Usually when I have books, magazines, or anything which I've already researched, I usually give it to other people I know. And then in the olfaction field, it's, it's sometimes things are scarce. Not everyone knows where to get them. And so you make a person happier than you just, When I lived, for instance, in Belarus, and I brought a lot of French books from my studies in France when I studied management in flavor and fragrance industry. So I brought these books and just gave it to my friend. And like, she was so happy because she would never get these things there. And usually I do it with all this kind of stuff. But with this edition, why it became a nostalgia. I'm bad at playing with letters and not my mother tongue. But for me, it became a very nostalgic edition, since it's probably the first thing in many years I'm actually taking with me to Denmark from here, not like giving it to someone. I understand like, wow, what a commitment. But for me personally, it's a commitment because I have never ever had a chance to read something like that. And I thought like, wow, this is super cool. It's just the idea for a publishing house, like really collecting these type of stories. One of the things you used in this particular magazine, okay, you will tell about the idea since I want to hear it. It's also a smell card, like very nicely packed. And this smell card, for me, I don't know how about the author, but for me it was a 1 + 1 thing = 3, because basically this particular smell doesn't give me anything, but together with the story, it gives me a lot. So going back to this magazine, how the whole idea of like, you had a lot of things on your shoulders and you decided, well, now we also have to make a particular magazine devoted to olfactory stories plus art. That's how I could call it.
Yeah, so I'll give you the long story. So basically, when I was a student at Free University in Amsterdam, I would volunteer my time with Kunstlicht, which is an academic journal that's run by student volunteers. And it's all dedicated to visual art. Mm-hmm. I think it even says Journal for Visual Culture.
Oh.
So it's all dedicated to visual art. And I think it was right when I started my internship with Odeuropa at the beginning of 2021, I think. Editor-in-chiefs at the time wrote like a group chat and said, oh, we need some ideas for journals. What should we do for the next edit journal? And I said, well, it would be really cool to do something about smell. And so we had one conversation about it. And the editors-in-chief said, oh, we should do it about nostalgia. And I was like, I had really no connection, actually. I just thought that makes sense. Smell and nostalgia makes a lot of sense.
True.
Perhaps I'm unromanticizing it right now, but we'll get farther and then you'll feel better about it.
Okay.
So basically this was like, I guess almost 3 years ago. And the thing is that, luckily, I'm so happy this happened, but they had journal issues like lined up for years.
Oh.
So I didn't get the opportunity to edit the journal until the beginning of 2023.
Wow.
And I was very happy about this because when I proposed the journal idea, let's just do a journal about smell, I had no idea what I was doing in the field of smell. I had not found my identity yet. I don't know if I've found it yet, but I think more than back then. And so I hadn't really found my identity yet in like the smell world, whatever you want to call it. And so by the time it was the beginning of 2023, I had found my identity, at least enough. And then I had come across all of these examples by then of smell and nostalgia, and I had a better idea of what was necessary or what needed to happen still in this field of nostalgia, as we call it. And I had also found Emerins, who just interviewed me randomly for City Sniffers for Odeuropa. And I just really liked her and we got along very well. And she's like, yeah, I'm really interested in smell. And I have this article I've been writing about the smell of a Dutch department store. And so she was very passionate about smell as well. And I thought, okay, well, I just found my partner in editing this issue. And so, yeah, we came together. And by then there was a different editor-in-chief. So there was Lisa. And she was really, really great because she was super open to the idea because, like I said, it's a journal of visual culture. And so we had to find like a balance between art and smell because I was like all about the scents. And she was like, wait, but we have to remember the identity of the journal. But she was really experimental. And she allowed us to include in the call for papers, because I thought this was very important, that it wasn't just a call for papers or call for memories or whatever it was. We also wanted to do a call for smells. And so also, luckily, a lovely perfumer, Lucille Lafranc, she sent us she didn't send us, but she sent the ideas for 6 scents for the journal. So technically we have 6. But 1 was turned into the perfume card. So of course then I said, okay, well now we have scents for the journal, so we have to have a scent with the journal. And so we raised a bit of money because again, we're on a very limited budget. So we raised some money to fund the smell card, which is printed by Alphapack, an amazing printer of these really amazingly smelly smell cards.
I had this question. I haven't researched them, but I thought like, wow, interesting thing. I never heard about this company, and now you're saying those guys are amazing. So
yeah,
cool.
They're in France. It's I don't know how many people work, but I always talk with Francoise, and she is super amazing. And so we made this card to go with the journal. And what I like about it is that, of course, the journal it turned a lot into like a memory book, kind of like a lot of the. I was really surprised by the. I'm searching for the word right now. Vulnerability of the writers, because we're talking about publishing something, and a lot of these articles are so vulnerable that they're sharing so much because they're about smell, and like these very integral memories of these people's lives. I was really shocked by this, but what I really love is that with the smell card, when you're reading the journal, the entire journal smells like the scent card.
Yes.
So I think everybody is now like, every time they smell that smell, if they encounter it again somewhere else, who knows, they will always remember it as the smell of when they were reading Nosetalgia by, the Kunstlicht journal, Nosetalgia. So yeah, that's something that I really like about the aspect of the smell card. But of course, you can't have something about smell and not have a smell with it. I think that was very important to me, and I really emphasized that with my co-editor, and she was very happy to have that as well, part of the journal.
Well, I'm listening I'm now sitting fascinated, just looking at Sofia talking about this journal. Since for me, it was such a huge experience reading the stories, almost physically smelling things that I describe it. And I just wanted to add two things from my perspective. That the first one was that, of course, everyone will find like favorite stories, less favorite stories, as usual. I was mostly very deeply touched by the tear gas story. But I am very amazed by the way these stories are representing cultural things. They're like, I don't even think that these stories would have the same impact without mentioning smells. And you could not smell all of those in the magazine. But somehow, because of the focus, because of the focus on that, you start to immerse even deeper. And well, the thing I wanted to ask is if the magazine, I know if it's going to be available for a long time, is it possible even to afterwards to reprint it or like send it for a second something? It's just so valuable in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's still available, I think, until we run out of issues. I have no idea how many are left, but it's still available now. And of course we ship I think for free internationally, so anyone can receive it.
I think it was for free, yes.
Yeah.
I've ordered free issues. All of those.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I think what I really liked about this experience of editing this journal, and it was one of my reasons for editing the journal. Or one of my main ideas or wishes, I guess you could say wishes, I think is a better word. The smell world, I don't even know what it's called. I struggle with this. But this world that we find ourselves in, as whether we're an academic or a perfumer or an aromatherapist or researcher, whatever that may be, I find that, or scientist, I find these fields very exclusive. And so we all have our little pods that we hang out in. We have our networks. We call on our networks to do, oh, I'm doing this. Let's do this together again. And it almost like we turn into like Martin Scorsese always showing Leonardo DiCaprio. And that's not always what we want, right? We want to expand the world, at least I do. And so something I loved about Nosetalgia is we were opening up this world for anyone. Anyone could could enter, and there was no judgment. It was just, come on, let's see what you got. And I think this posed for really interesting results because you have, first of all, you have perspectives from such diverse corners of the world.
Yes.
From all different types of people. We had artists, we had perfumers, we had some scholars, like we had all these different types of people coming together. And yeah, and it was just open. And I think we need more of that. I encourage more of that. I hope I can encourage more of it through whatever I do.
And now you're doing it right, like in this second as well, I hope.
Yeah. So, just every time I try, that's one of my things is I try to, when I meet someone, like I try to extend the arm in that direction and like pull them to go into my network as well. And then the network keeps going and going and going. And that's what I really loved about this journal. Luckily we had an amazing result, right? Maybe if we would have gotten 10 different contributions, maybe it would have been different. But I think it turned out really amazing how I loved all the different perspectives. Like you're talking about the tear gas in the Hong Kong protests. Like I never would have said we're gonna receive that contribution. Never. But we did, and it was really amazing also. So, I can't remember what your question was.
That means that actually the topic is so interesting that it's just the question doesn't matter. Whew, yeah, I mean, we could have made a whole podcast about it. It's just amazing, the idea, and of course there would be links to all the things we are mentioning here, so that this world should be expansive. But in your answer to this question, I found partly my reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Since in the beginning, and this is one of the first episodes, you've asked me like, well, what's the idea behind the podcast? And I honestly said like, well, I don't know. I've never expected the Russian podcast to reach audience and to make people more interested in smells. And now we're doing it the same here. And I believe more people are interested in doing that. Another question, why are we interested in doing that? I believe is just a belief that we have to use what we have. So smells might be used, should be used, and not using them was probably a huge mistake in the past. And here I'm coming to the question which I had, because it's, again, I believe one of the things you do in your work, in your research and academic work, is just thinking what smells from the past are important to capture, or important to find, or people need to know them, or smell them, or they don't need it. It's just smells from the past, and we already, like, we are in a hygienic society. We don't need it, and we just overleft. I just wanted to say, but we've survived through all what we've survived through in the past years. And well, smells from, I know, the times where people didn't have baths, as you usually say, but it's not true. It's not true for everyone. It's probably for some European countries, it's an issue, maybe not. But the thing is that what I wanted to ask you about, because you research and you have colleagues who do that as well, have there been any like particular findings from the periods of history prior to the times we remember, which probably fascinated you? Like, I don't know, I know that there is a lady who researched the smells of gloves, of like leather gloves or something. Not something you've considered before reading Nosetalgia or before going to a museum, but maybe there were some smells for you which you just discovered and described, and you thought like, wow, it's fascinating. How could we not pay attention to that?
Yeah, so you kind of touched upon 3 questions, it seems.
I feel like it's an investigative.
Yeah, so the first was which or how do we choose what scents should be safeguarded?
Oh yes.
So that was a question. So that's a difficult one, because I think that depends on you and it depends on your culture, depends on your background. But of course there are scents that are going extinct. that we won't encounter. I mean, even I was just listening to a lecture by Rachel Hertz yesterday, and she was talking about how like so many people have emotional connections with gasoline, that they love the smell of gasoline, but gasoline is going to start being less and less available because we're more and more using electric cars. So is the smell of gasoline worth safeguarding? Should it be documented for the future? Two examples I always use, or my favorite two examples, are a magazine stand.
Right.
So I was in Germany a year ago or so, and I smelled a magazine stand, and I just was so excited by this because I hadn't smelled a magazine stand or newspaper or magazine stand in years. And this to me, because there was a magazine stand around the corner from my house when I was growing up. And so I know that smell very well. And it's kind of funny that they all smell the same, but I guess it makes sense because paper processing and whatsoever. But yeah, so that one. And the smell of the Berlin U-Bahn is also a smell that I would love if someone would safeguard that smell.
By the way, I wanted to tell you that, but in Russia there is a perfumer who made scents for the train stations in the Moscow metro.
Oh, cool.
So I was instantly thinking about you, this U-Bahn story. I believe I've heard it in one of the episodes that you've mentioned because you're so fascinated. And I thought like, wow, probably they also have, they have a lot of perfumers in Berlin, but they probably do not consider it to be that special as you do, since they live there.
Yeah. So also, I have a nice connection with it, but maybe someone else doesn't. So I think it's important to safeguard, but maybe someone else doesn't consider it important to safeguard.
True.
So so that's kind of interesting. And then because I was just in Los Angeles, I was thinking, is the reason why I feel often like not so happy in the Netherlands or not so at home in the Netherlands is because the smell is so different. Because I went home and I'm like, automatically you get off the plane and you're like, it's home. Like you just recognize it.
Like home.
Yeah, it smells like home. So yeah, like even these kinds of implicit smells,
they make it probably difficult to decide what things to you want to like keep or not, because it's different for you, for me, for like anyone else.
Yeah, so it's almost like, okay, well, a photograph of this might be important for you, but a photograph of this might not be important to me. So it's kind of, if we could all have our own collection of what we want to safeguard for scents, that would be very interesting.
Right.
But you asked me, so of course Odeuropa is a more historically based project. So we focus on up to 1920. So a lot of the work that we've done with the olfactory events is mostly to do, I would say, with the 16th and 17th century. And so one of my favorite scents that we've developed was for a project called Follow Your Nose, in collaboration with Museum Ulm in Germany and IFF. And we created the scent of a pomander. It was for an artwork called The Portrait of Eitel Besser by Martin Schaffner, and it's from 1516. And the image is an older man. He's wearing a very nice fur coat or fur scarf, you could say. And hidden in his hands, you could almost miss it if you didn't look, is a rosary, a wooden rosary with a pomander, a silver pomander at the end of it. He's his eyes are kind of staring forward and he's looking like he's in prayer. So he's praying. And you imagine, like, the way he looks, he's very well off. He's wealthy. He's wearing a very nice outfit. So you can kind of tell by the whole atmosphere of the photo, of the painting, that he is a well-off gentleman. So what's interesting about this painting is the pomander, which, a pomander, I will explain what a pomander is. A pomander is it can be silver, but it can also be in other forms, like a lot of people might know, like these oranges with cloves stuck inside of it. That's also a pomander. But these very intricate ones that like the wealthy had are usually silver, and they would be on a long chain, especially for women on their skirts, and they would be at arm's reach because people back then, up until the late 1800s, believed in miasma theory. And miasma theory was that bad smells equals disease. And so when they would pass a bad smell, they could just lift this pomander very quickly up to their nose, cover their nose, and smell it. And that was supposed to keep disease away. Now, the miasma theory actually doesn't have too much off, right? Like, I mean, still, hygiene and smell, it's still quite tied together.
Oh, well, I have a super stupid story to that, but before you described it so well, I have not, it's a revelation to me right now, since it's always nice to have an academic researcher here, since you used such a wonderful ways to describe things. I mean, people sometimes know what things are, maybe not, but when you describe them, like you couldn't not to understand what you are talking about.
That's good. Yeah. Because I'm usually worried that I'm going all over the place. So
well, no, you do well up to the point. And I remember that in childhood, you were saying about this theory. By the way, I didn't know the name for it, but I know maybe it was also in your childhood, or it's just like only in Russia. Like imagine people still use, and I was using it. Take a coating from a Kinder Surprise eggs. Like there is a toy which you have to construct somehow. Sometimes it's full already, but there is a case for it, like a plastic or like case. Yeah. So what we had there back in times, like I'm not that old. So, but what did we have is we put oh my God, garlic. Like, like you put garlic there inside, make small holes in this plastic.
You made a pomander.
Sort of. Now I understood it. When you were describing it, like it was mostly from silver. It was like, yes, in the Grass Museum of Perfumery, it's totally that, because there are like hundreds of pomanders of all forms and shapes, and most of them are from silver. But now when you really described it, and I am from a beginner mind listening to you, I realized that those weird things which were supposed to prevent infections and diseases, and we in fact had them like a necklace. Yeah. So those weird
vampires.
I believe vampires is more likely. So
yeah, definitely.
Like I realized that I used a pomander back then in my school year.
Well, and pomander is the word for this, the silver one and the orange with the cloves. And of course, pomanders came in different forms. So pomanders could be the silver one, and then it could fall kind of like a tangerine, and you would have little segments, so a segmented pomander, and they would have little drawers, and you could take the drawer, open the drawer, and you would have the resins or the spices inside. And so each one would have its individual components. Or Karl Verbeek owns a pomander, and inside it's a oh no, what's the word for it? When it's a gyroscope. So it was so that it would hang in the chariot cars. And so if it was moving, then the gyroscope inside would move with it, and holding the burning resins. Wow. It wouldn't dump the resins. It would keep them straight in a carriage, but you needed your burning resins in a carriage, right? And the other way it was used was, Caro told me, is that you would burn the resins in it, and then the silver would warm. So then you could use it as a hand warmer, and you could pass it around as a hand warmer.
Wow. That's lovely.
But the silver ones are for the very upper class. Mm-hmm. So there's also, I don't know if you know the song Ring Around the Rosie.
No, I don't, but...
Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. It's a children's song, but it's about the plague. Because you would have ring around the rosy, which is what you get when you would get the plague. pocket full of posies. Posies are the flowers. So they thought that the flowers in their pockets would keep them from getting disease, but it didn't. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Well, you can fill in the blank there, but that's what that song means. So posies would be the kind of poor man's pomander. But back to a much nicer story. So Lizzie Marks, a historian on Odeuropa, she researched a historic recipe for pomanders, because you can find historic recipes in books of secrets, they're called. And so she researched, but this one actually was from a segmented pomander, the recipe that we used for Museum Ulm. And so the recipe was written on the pomander itself. And she chose this one because it was a German pomander, and we were working with a German museum. And so this was especially in the 16th and 17th century. So the ingredients, and I brought it for you to smell.
Wow. Thank you, since I know that this museum is on a reconstruction right now, if I'm not wrong, since I've checked.
But Eva Leisenschneider, who is the curator that we worked with, she said that the olfactory tours are doing so well that I think they brought some of the artworks to where they currently are, their offices, so that they could do like mini olfactory tours. But this scent,
it's totally from natural oils, since it does seem like it might be, like all the ingredients seem to be, like, might have existed back then.
Yeah.
To my knowledge.
Yeah, so the recipe was, things you could probably pull from the garden. Of course, IFF made the scent, and then of course there was a little bit of perfumer creative interpretation, but do you want to say some of the ingredients, or you want me to tell you what they are?
Well, okay, I say what I feel. The red small flower, which is carnal, like the very smelly flower, which guys, I believe in the States people like it more, like carnals. I will
not rose.
Well, no, but now since we have a courtesy of googling things and how they are named in different.
Here, it really smells like something to me that I can say.
I don't know what those smells are. We are smelling the cap, by the way. I just have a small vial with an opening, and
which is not the best way to smell. I should for you.
But anyways, the flower which I was referring to is this one. Carnation.
Okay.
Yeah.
No carnation in there, but
it smells with eugenol a little bit. I mean,
yes.
This is a component, but
clove.
Clove.
Yes.
I also feel something minty, but it again might be from thyme.
I think it's the eugenol or the.
Still eugenol. Yes, clove. But in the base, something very. I don't know who is that, but I don't know what exactly. Seems like something which actually could be burned, some incense like, but myrrh or. But okay, it might be like, and people who just listen also might imagine, like old time perfumes, what would they be like? This one is elevated a little bit, but when you said rose, now I start feeling that there is a really strong flower aspect.
Yeah.
And the rich flower, the sweet flower. I believe I couldn't name anything else, but well, you could probably help us out. Thank you, Sofia. It's such a wonderful opportunity to smell it.
Yeah, so it's rosemary, oregano, cinnamon, rose, lavender, clove, civet, ambergris, and musk. But that's the IFF pyramid. So
component-wise, it might be different, but we know.
So I had one more challenge that I didn't get to say, which I will say now.
Okay, do, because afterwards we'll go to the Blitz questions, which is my challenge. So
okay,
you start first.
So the last challenge, and it's a perfect opportunity to say it, is the last challenge of olfactory storytelling.
Oh, I thought it was just challenge to me.
No. The last challenge of olfactory storytelling, because I said two, and then we started talking about nostalgia. The third one is creating scents which represent historical ideas or anything. Because as we know, the world of perfumery is quite secretive. And so when you give them a historic recipe, when you give a perfumer a historic recipe, or this is something we realized within Odeuropa, is that when we gave the perfumers a historic recipe and they handed us back a scent, we had no idea what they had done with that historic recipe.
Yeah, and they also keep formula. If it's a big house, otherwise it's possible to do it.
So first of all, we had to emphasize that the accuracy or the use of the actual ingredients that we gave was important. And second of all, so kind of manage the perfumer's creative interpretation. We had to manage that. And we also had to know what they did with the recipe. And so this was a really big challenge and still is a very big challenge. So for example, this has oregano, but the recipe that we had given to begin with didn't have oregano. So that's also a challenge. And of course, authenticity. After working on Odeuropa and getting, having some press engagements within the project, everyone is always saying, oh, so that's how the past smelled, right? That's authentic. And authenticity is a really difficult bar. So that's another challenge within, that kind of creating a heritage scent realm, is like the authenticity then of that scent and what you reveal to your audience as authentic and how authentic. And so
there are a lot of problems. You just touched it and I immediately felt like even musk, which you mentioned, like musk, like they've been prohibited like hundreds of times in the last few years. And even if you knew like a really, really recipe for like very specific, like everything is listed there, even like, and you have no restrictions, which is not the case, and you had the best like raw materials and perfumers and everything, like the climate still has changed. Like, and even the, like we know, and it's a huge challenge for the industry, that a rose from here doesn't smell like the rose from there, which particular rose it was, which particular batch of the roses, like which year, which place. A lot of issues. And this one is definitely huge. It's an interpretation. It gives you this 1 + 1 = 3 feeling. But if you are going for the authenticity, then it's probably not the easiest field to navigate.
And a lot of people, a lot of researchers, they value the authenticity, that it really needs to be authentic. But and I'm sure many people disagree with me, but for me, I really think that the value is the olfactory storytelling and how it makes the person think, or how it changes their mind, or how it makes them remember something. Just because that's not the exact pomander recipe doesn't mean that now you will remember what miasma theory is. I could ask you maybe in a week and you will probably be able to tell me what it is, because I just gave you this tangible thing to kind of like link on. And to me, that's the most rewarding thing, not whether that actually is the recipe that it's supposed to be. And as much as I, of course, go for as authentic as possible, and I have within Odeuropa, we have done that, where we always try to be as authentic as possible when creating these scents. It doesn't mean that that isn't taken with a grain of salt. And,
True. It's more of a, like, what you are dealing with on a daily basis is given a sensitive challenge to people, more than any other type of challenge. And we are missing this type of challenge. Like, people think about that fitness is only a physical thing. Then those who do some sort of work, they think about mental fitness. And here's a sensitive fitness. Hello, we also have this one. And I believe more types of this work should be introduced and conducted everywhere. And I hope it will. So thank you. Well, a huge pleasure. Yeah, I learned a lot. Have my own garlic revelation. Sorry, guys, but wearing a Kinder Surprise case on your neck.
It's so great.
Well, for winter month, it's a little bit weird. We'll go to the Blitz section then. The questions. No, I mean
these are going to use
for the Blitz.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So let's do this. If you could transport yourself to any moment in history solely through scent, which period would you choose?
This is already not a Blitz question because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking that I don't know that I want to be transported to another time.
Well, probably it's a good answer. So.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Are you allowing me to be there for a few hours and then I can leave? Or is it that I'm stuck there?
No, let's say it's a safe setting. You could just go explore, write a paper, and that's it.
I would say the 15th and 16th century would be interesting just because I've been surrounded by historians that are just telling me all about the research that's happening there. And so then to actually go and experience the smells would be interesting. But I think then I'd want to leave after 2 hours.
Or 2 minutes, probably.
Yeah,
after the first rotten fish or something, which the researchers tell us about. We don't know.
Yeah.
But,
So
it's interesting. Thanks. So, how has your personal scent palette or palette? How it's in English? Palette. Evolved throughout your journey with Odeuropa?
I would say I'm just more aware of smells. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but I'm constantly aware of smells now. I'm aware of my environment and aware of what smells are around me. And then I try to identify them more than I ever did before, which is kind of annoying, but interesting at the same time.
But basically this shows that what you're doing is kind of bringing results. Meaning that if, you're saying, has gone through this journey and it impacted you in a way of recognizing smells, of course you work with them a lot, of course, but this means that it's possible for every individual, and it might be interesting for every individual then.
And sometimes now I relate things I'm smelling to scents created by Odeuropa. So I'm like, that smells like the smell of hell. I don't like it. Or, so now, I recognize things and in relation to actual scents, which is interesting because we usually relate things to sources like strawberry or something like this. But now I'm like, oh, that smells like that scent. But I don't necessarily have the words for it still. But I find that interesting as well. At some point, maybe I'll have the vocabulary enough to say, that smells like...
I believe it might be the next project, a huge one, since it's not a Blitz question again already. It's not a Blitz even, but right, it's something I think about a lot. As you said, people go bring something to a resource. It's the easiest way to do. But eventually, even if we all bring something to a resource, would that be enough to the source? Would that be enough for an efficient communication? All right. Do you yourself, when exploring historical scents, you find yourself more drawn to floral, herbal, or spicy aromas?
Spicy?
Oh, yeah. I could relate to that. If you had to create a scent capsule for future generations to experience today, let's say today where you are, what would you put in this capsule and send to someone in the future? And you're really wishing them to explore the essence of this period of time.
Like a past period.
Well, yeah, for them it would be a past period, and for you today it's the present.
So wait, sorry, I'm getting confused. So you want a scent from today?
To the future.
Okay, so a smell that I would smell today, sent to the future so that they would smell it.
Yeah, and you think it's so important them to smell this smell, and it will help them to realize, that's the way they smelled. Like what you do with this pieces for some places or something. But you have to choose one.
Mm-hmm.
You've already mentioned Yubon, but probably it's not gonna be the best version. Or we've discussed bread with sprinkles. Would you send it or?
That's really hard.
Mm.
Well, I'll tell you the first thing that came to mind, which is really embarrassing, but I was thinking more of like the 90s because I've been very nostalgic lately, and I was thinking of the smell of like L'Oreal Kids No More Tears shampoo because I used to go to the supermarket and just like smell those intensely, like open them and smell them in the aisle while I was shopping. So yeah, let's go with L'Oreal No More Kids. No more kids. No more tears. No more kids. L'Oreal No More Tears shampoo. I think it was like a watermelon one I really liked.
I wanted to make some bad jokes about no more kids and no more tears, but yeah, we'll not do that.
That is a super stupid answer, but that's okay.
That's totally okay. Well, bread with sprinkles. No, it's not. And the last one.
Okay.
But well. Breathe out, breathe in. If you could collaborate with just one perfumer to create a limited edition fragrance inspired by the project which you're currently working with, which is Odeuropa, I mean like your main work, which person probably or which type of perfumer would you choose for this?
Okay, this is really embarrassing, but I don't really know many perfumers.
That's the thing for the industry to be embarrassed, not for you.
I have no idea because of course, there's the one perfumer that I've worked with a couple of times, Carol Covez, and I love working with her and she makes really great scents, but I've already worked with her. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe this is call me up.
we could make a call for perfumers because there are a lot of independent perfumers as well, which we don't know about. But if you could imagine what would you like at this extravaganza event, for instance, which is set kind of soon? If you were selling a merch product, like so like to raise some money for the next project, etc. Of course, all for good reasons. What you would choose for the smell of it? So like imagine a bottle. It's written an unknown perfumer because we don't know perfumers who we work with. Thank you. But like...
I would love, we've talked about this a bunch of times in Odeuropa, but having a scented candle with one of our scents, I think would be fun. I mean, Ineke Hausman, who's a Dutch researcher, she made a candle from the perfume of Constantine Huygens, who's, a man of many hats, but she made a historic perfume from a recipe he had. Mm-hmm. And she made it into a candle. So that I thought that was really cool. And I even have the candle in my house and I love to burn it. So I think that would be really cool if we had like a candle burning or candle for sale.
Yeah, and I also believe having candle instead of a perfume also very special considering the work you do. So it's it sort of sums it up probably better.
Yeah.
Because burning has been, like, for those who hasn't got the idea, like, burning has been one of the main ways to transport scents through generations, like, for centuries. Perfume is just a very modern thing compared to that.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's a good idea that it's not, it's another application, another medium to transfer it.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the presentation methods.
Yeah. That's the way we differ now. But thank you, Sofia. I so enjoyed having you. I believe our listeners will have some links to check in the description box. We will prepare for them.
That was fun.
Right.